When it comes to morality, Aristotle believed that our morality was not based on our actions and consequences, but rather a set of characteristics that can be taught and acquired through consistent practice throughout our lives. This idea would then go on to be coined as Aristotle's theory of virtue ethics, with many of its components still being utilized in contemporary society. The basis of this theory is set upon the idea of guiding yourself to a good life, which can be achieved through practicing virtues, and if you practice the right characteristics, you can achieve what he called eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is what we would consider the good life, and it consists of two components, phronesis and arete. The arete component roughly translates to excellence or virtue, and this is the segment in which individuals focus on developing characteristics that would lead them to a life which they were content with, or the good life. However, Aristotle didn't believe that these virtues just came out of nowhere, but rather traits that were deeply within us, not innate, um, that can be highlighted and illustrated through practice that we do. Your character is made up of vices and virtues that were almost kind of put on a scale, with virtues being smack dab in the middle, and what he would call the vice of excess on one side and the vice of deficiency on the other side. You can practice a virtue so much that it almost becomes an unwantable characteristics and would not help you achieve arete. I think the best example of vices and virtues would be, if we take courage, for example, the virtue itself would be courage. A vice of deficiency would be coward or timidness. And then a vice of, let's say, excess would be uh, ego, foolishness, stupidity, you could say. Uh, so obviously reaching eudaimonia is not easy, and you can't just go around practicing every virtue and characteristics and hope of saying, "Oh, if I've done it all, then I'll reach this eudaimonia." I believe that another part of arete is that a person has to truly and genuinely believe the virtues that they practice, rather than just doing them not because they are right societally or we think they're right, but they genuinely feel within them that it is the right virtue to pursue. The other component of eudaimonia is phronesis. Although not explained directly by Aristotle himself, it translates roughly to practical wisdom, and pretty much the idea behind it is that we kind of take the virtues we learned and we apply them to real life and our daily activities. It's almost left as an open-ended interpretation for how you want to apply these, and it's what I like about this theory is because I think if Aristotle set like a rigid and structured way, like a step-to-step guide of this is how you apply phronesis, I mean, you won't really, people might not agree with it. And then as times change, maybe those things can't be done in the way that Aristotle wanted them. Um, I think what it does is it kind of lets anyone interpret it how they want in a way that they want that fits them. And leads them to what they would consider a good life. If Aristotle gave us his structured version, like that may be his version of a good life, but that may not apply to everyone. It may apply to some people, but not everyone. So it wouldn't be fair to say that, oh, you didn't achieve a good life because you didn't do it this way. Um, I believe it's more encompassing for all, and it becomes a theory that more people can follow in a ways that are convenient and valuable to them. It's less of determining the actions are right, but rather are the things and decisions you're making uh coming from a place that you like truly believe in and it is backed by a virtue that you've developed. Acting for the wrong reasons or not with a true belief in the virtue or just be seen as a vice of me, a deficiency or excess, and it can be put somewhere on the scale. Although it's a very inviting theory, some of it object to it because it's self-centered and fails to consider its effect on others, and its flexibility is another objection for not providing a guide for people who follow it. It doesn't lay a guide out for us to act upon, and is very situation based in a way. Although not a consequentialist based theory, I think it's important to consider its effect on others. I mean, if the way you're practicing the virtues in society does have a negative effect on someone, should that not be considered? Even if the virtue that they're pursuing is completely good and the characteristic they're practicing is totally like great for them and good for society, if the way they're practicing it is that good, I would think that that would matter. I think it's important for people to be wary of how people present because at the end of the day, you can practice all these virtues, but then how they're seen in the real world is ultimately what other people see and how it affects others. Um, and another objection is, well, what if someone is just practicing just to practice them, which goes with the idea of conscientin people, who are people who just go through the motions of like obtaining these virtues, but they don't really like. believe in them. Uh, which kind of goes back to the idea of what I said is they don't mention arete, but I think another thing we should focus on is the person who pursues these virtues through virtue ethics should actually genuinely believe in them and wholeheartedly pursue them. Um, Although the virtues are comprised of good life are somewhat culturally and societally based, kind of what I mentioned with like a list. There's no like standard actual list, but there are certain virtues that we would agree on. I think since there's no good list, it's flexible, which is good. But then it also is like if you don't, let's say you don't have these certain virtues that most people have, is it like have you achieved the good life? But I think the way it's set to be very flexible can be a great counter argument for it. I think virtue ethics is a good way to guide our lives, and it fits the needs and desires that we specifically have, and it opens up possibilities for how we reach the good life in our own way rather than having to follow a set structure.